Recording.
Hi. Do you ever feel lonely?
Jesus Christ.
Alright, intro.
Yes, hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Second String Debate Team's podcast. It's me, Javin, our friend Peaches.
Alex back for round 3.
Ooh. Say your name?
Jace.
No, my name is...
My name is Jay Stevens.
Yo, we gotta start over.
Jace.
No.
This is your moment.
This is your moment.
This is your defining moment. This is how the people...
Ever recorded.
This is how the people get introduced. Well, not really introduced to you, because you already did your cheerleading bit last week, which was great.
Top notch.
It was top notch. You're a top notch cheerleader.
DM'd about it multiple times.
Have you? What have people said?
You were like, hey, look at this video of you. I'm Jace.
I'm Kelly.
All right.
We got there.
So, do you wanna start us out with your talking point this week?
Please do.
That you were the one you were ready to talk about
If
a couple minutes ago.
it.
Did you write it down?
We didn't. But I did do something great today.
All right.
Okay.
What? I can't remember it.
Guys, show
It's
him.
my
I want to hear what he has to say.
What
did you do?
Let me hustle, okay? So, okay.
I gotta write that quote
I
down.
was, you know when you take when you take multiple days to clean your room? You know, you like do it in stages. Like the first day I did my laundry, but I didn't fold it. And then I was
Absolutely.
like, wait, I should wash my sheets. So my laundry sat for a day on the floor. And then I finally made my bed so I could now fold my laundry. You know what I'm getting at? Like, you do it in stages over multiple days.
Yes.
And then, so I've been doing that. And I bought like an actual comforter finally and some like more pillows. Because my pillows are just flat, so. And they're
Why'd
always
you look
soft.
at me?
Because you were the one that told me this, and I finally was just like, hell, I gotta get new pillows. And then I put the new pillows in like the nice new cases, and I was like, man, this shit ain't comfortable.
So basically,
Is that what you were getting at? That you have uncomfortable?
Hold on, there's more. So, he said today I finally was like making the bed again, and I also washed the pillowcases. And I was like, why the hell have I not put the new ones in the soft bedsheet one? That's it.
So your story was you did adult things.
Yeah, I like switched the decorative pillows to being the shit pillows. The nice ones are now in the comfy cases.
He sent me a Snapchat video of it and was so proud of himself. Like this is like a revolutionary moment for him.
We should all give Jace a round of applause.
Nico does. Oh, I don't know. Even Nico said.
You're gonna love it.
Oh, he did it understand.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this is Nico.
Nico, do you have anything you want to say to the people? No.
No.
All right.
Yeah, he's cool. He's too cool for this.
I mean,
Kelly, what was he talking about? He brought up a point. We talked about it for a bit in the car. What was it?
In the car?
Yeah, on the way up here,
Being
right?
feminine.
I think it was. It had to do something with being feminine.
Sharing your emotions, but
that's not.
I know, this is so bad because we got off on such a bad
I
tangent.
know. And then I started tuning out, so.
wait. So you were talking to people.
Tuning out. I'm tuning out. Like,
So CJ is just talking to it.
Thrown down apparently to myself.
Both of them are just.
No, Jason's actually pretty engaged.
Yeah.
It had to do something with like,
Think, Jace.
oh, building a bias.
yes,
This
that was
question
it.
came from my psychology class.
Yes.
And there's like building a bias because of what stage you are in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you were younger, something might have happened with someone or a type of person, and then you build these barriers off like certain characteristics. It's like, how do you break past bias in order to like, meet new people? We have a class with a lot of people from one particular background, and it makes you. We've realized it just kind of makes certain people this weird. It's hard to describe.
Very inclusive.
Very
So
With
shut out.
no intentions of changing it.
So let me give an example that I feel like actually met this, right? So there was a person, I'm not going to name it on camera, because I don't want him to ever see it, I guess. I mean, I'll talk to him in person about it. Last thing I want to do is watch this. Anyways, there's this person. Everybody knows him. He's tall as fuck. He's a sweetheart. You know, okay. So everybody knows him. All right. Except for you. You never met him. All right.
Well,
for the longest time.
was wrong.
Yeah. Micah. No, that's not it. For the longest time, I didn't like him just because I had this perception about who he was. And then a major life event happened. And when that life event happened and I was there after the fact, first thing I did is walk up to him and give him a hug. And ever since then, I've learned that this person is an incredible person. He is the nicest, sweetest man you're ever going to meet. But because of my personal bias of what I thought about him, I never allowed that to happen previously. Right, Jace?
Or do you think tragedy brings people together?
No, I think I'm just an asshole.
That's 100% true.
Yeah, and I mean that genuinely. I think tragedy can, but I think in this particular situation, I think I'm just an asshole sometimes, and it takes a lot for me to be open to new concepts.
Well, here's another thing
Sometimes.
too, from a biological perspective, of course. When
Are you about to say it's because he was so tall I felt threatened? Are you
no,
about to make a short joke?
no, it wasn't.
No, but you did.
No, but you just kind of attacked yourself.
Yeah, you burned yourself.
See, that's what I was talking about. You're Ben Affleck right now.
I need to have a...
Don't. That's the thing. Don't have Ben Affleck moments. Always
I can't
be Matt Damon.
I can't always be Ben Affleck.
Always
Jeez.
be Matt Damon.
All right, what were you going to say, sweetie? I'm sorry.
So, you know, back when food wasn't plentiful, and you basically were limited to how many calories you could consume to the amount of effort you could expend. When you're trying to judge people, your brain has to make these calculations very quickly, and our bodies are kind of designed to basically do the least amount of work for the most reward. So you're kind of biologically predisposed to make snap judgments on people rather than giving them a full thought process of who this person could be, what they're like, what they're going through. You just make these snap judgments because it actually requires less energy from you to do that, and then you operate based on constructs that you previously built up. So it's not necessarily like you're being a bad person, you're just following your biological.
I still feel like this has something to do with him being tall and me being short.
Maybe, but that's on you.
So like I see this tall dude and I'm like, he's going to take all my food.
Could be.
Is that what you
could
Is that what you
No, you don't
like when you're in bed?
Yeah,
Get away from my food.
No, it's probably like growing up with Micah, who's much taller, and your older brother. Micah kind of picked on you a little bit. You were probably just like, early age, you were like, tall people mess with me. And maybe that was why you made that predisposition construct to judge him in such a way.
Potentially.
It's easier, it's quicker. Like, we all do it. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. Like, I didn't like Jace when I first met him at all.
Yeah, asshole.
You didn't like me either.
That's because you're kind of rude.
No, it's because you were rude to me.
You came in hot.
Hey,
Sorry,
you guys are a wonderful couple.
Yes,
Let's not
sorry.
do this, right?
No. But no, I mean, you're, if what you're getting at is like how you know, certain things can alter your perception of a person. I don't even know if there's really a reasoning for it sometimes. I think just, you know, sometimes it's just time, exposure to the person. You realize like, oh, all these things I thought about you might be,
I mean,
skewed.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to disagree with Alex and say that there might be this baser instinct in us that innately tells us to have some sort of defense or barrier when doing something or meeting somebody new. I'm not actually going to deny that. I mean, when it comes down to it, humans can be pretty simple by nature, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, we like to think that we make all these calculations in our rational mind, in our thought process. And reality is our subconscious is doing like 90% of the work. Your rational mind can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Your subconscious actually processes so much more information. And when it comes to its conclusion, it feeds it to your rational mind and then just goes, act on this. But you're not really paying attention to all the subconscious thought processes that are going on.
You're just having that feeling.
Yeah, you just have that feeling. And so maybe when you're interacting with people, or this person you're talking about, and you've had enough experiences with them, your subconscious may have seen some like noticed some information that you weren't consciously aware of, and it was processing it kind of in the background, and when it came to this conclusion, you just fed it to your rational brain, and you were like, oh, okay, I kind of like him now. And
what if there's a much more shallow way to portray this? Like, let's say, maybe we can continue on this same example, but what if there's this preconceived notion about somebody that, lists specific things that you don't like, or you hear one person say one bad thing about them, and you immediately base your entire thing off of that?
No, you do. I'm actually saying that's completely true, because, again, it comes back to that you only expend enough information to act on naturally. So yeah, you'll hear this one thing, and then your mind just does a quick calculation, goes, well, in my experience, the people that I've met and encountered that have that one quality, I did not like. So your subconscious is like, all these informations, the body language, how he talks, blah, 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 feeds to your rational brain. You're just like, I just don't like you. But it's not, what I'm trying to say is, like, it's not necessarily like because you're a bad person either. It's just your brain is doing the quickest, fastest, most efficient calculation possible.
It's like, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is we're naturally shallow in a way, like on a first
Maybe like
impression basis.
naturally we have defense mechanisms.
Yeah, and maybe shallow is not necessarily the right word. I'm just kind of going off what you said, but
It's like a survival.
And I think it happens as you get older.
Like who can I trust? Who can I not trust?
Like,
might actually go back to your point of who's a threat to me. Not necessarily like who's going to take my food, but who's a threat to me.
Who's part of my collective, who's the outsiders.
Yeah.
So do you think it keeps going with age? Like, do you think you continue to keep putting up more and more barriers towards meeting people, whether it be intentional or unintentional? Or do you just reach a point in your life where you're kind of set, like your range of how you're going to receive people becomes set?
That's what we were talking about in the class. Is the older you get, the more of a bias you build. So, like,
do you think it continually builds up forever?
Yeah, because I'm not saying always, because you could have a new way of thought that makes you more open-minded in a way. So,
so maybe
it could
evolving.
Change, but you do build a bias the older you get.
I feel like what I'm hearing is variable, though. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. You guys remember when I had all the piercings and the crazy hair?
Mm-hmm.
So I came to realize that when I was younger, I was smart, but I was always like a weirdo, considered a weirdo. So I basically made myself look like a weirdo. Because in my mind, the only people I wanted to interact with were the people that didn't judge me for how I looked, but rather how I thought. So I put all these piercings and crazy hair just to look like ridiculous. But then I'd go to class and talk and turn in papers and get straight A's. And I was just like, okay, if you want to talk to me and you get past this, then I trust you enough to be open with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got older, I took it all off. So, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to do that. I can just talk to people and trust them. So in a way, like, I actually, like, decreased a bias in other people. Like, I don't need to, like, test them, to interact with them. But then at the same time, through other experiences, I have raised, like, walls. Like, in relationships, if I see certain behaviors, like, that's a red flag for me just because of past experiences.
So consciousness, to me, which is that discernment or the defense mechanisms, is more like a you. You have your young childhood here, and you have your older life here. And as you go down, this is sort of like where we are right now, your late 20s to mid 30s, where consciousness and intelligence is at its highest. And now we're going to start looping up again, because that's actually scientifically proven. The older you get, for lack of better words, the dumber you get. You're not going to be as smart. You're not going to be able to learn as much. You may still be smart with what you already know, but you're not going to be able to learn more, right? So
you can build, but you
well, hang on. What I'm trying to say with this is, yeah, now that's how you feel, but 40 years later, how do you think you're going to feel?
Well, you're asking me to look into the future.
That's what I'm saying. So, but my point to this is,
Now,
Javin, give me the pipe.
give me the pipe. No. So what I'm trying to say, and I want to relate this back to the man who brought this up, is, do you think that's true that, you know, when you get past this loop, do you think what they're saying, it could be true that we're going to have more of a bias the older we get, because essentially we're getting dumber. We're not going to be as open
I've
to
never
learning
heard
new
this
things.
getting dumber thing. This is the first
But
time
see,
I've
I don't
ever heard
know.
of this.
Yeah,
I
you
have no
reach
idea.
your peak of, you know, intelligence in your 30s, and after that it's all down.
I'll bring it back to another biological predisposition. It comes right back to that same argument that you only expend enough energy to make a decision to act on. And the older you get, you form more interactions, more neural networks in your brain of similar patterns and behaviors that you've witnessed. So your brain maybe isn't that it's getting dumber, maybe it's just more efficient at discerning certain behavior patterns and personality characteristics and stuff like that.
I think that goes against nature, though. I mean, what happens to the old animal?
So what if
Well,
both?
you're talking about physical exertion. I'm talking about neural network pathways.
They become more fragile, and they need more defense mechanisms because of that.
But what if both
And
are?
I think I'm actually
what if,
just now only proving your point. I'm realizing that.
what if both are true though? What if you
Alex
do?
is right. Shut the fuck up.
No. What if you do like
That's
say?
130 for me, 3 for CJ.
No, hey, first podcast. Go back.
Please say what you're gonna say. I've been trying to listen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but what if they both can
Alex,
coincide?
right.
What if he's correct? You do get dumber as you get older. You lose the ability the brain power to learn and understand. But what if your bias keeps growing? You can continue to have
bias keeps growing because you need more defenses.
Well, no, what I'm saying is you can, a bias doesn't have to be based on intelligence at all. You can continue to get older and older and just have crazier and crazier biases. They don't have to make sense. A bias doesn't have to be rooted in anything factual. You can keep just, you can get old as hell and be like, I fucking hate green jackets, like that's just how it gets.
But this comes back to neural pathways, and the more you incite those pathways, it's not the right word, but the more you use those neural pathways, the stronger they get, the stronger those bonds get between the thought processes. And so as you get older and the more often you go back through those neural pathways, like I hate green jackets, and every time you see a green jacket, you're just like, I fucking hate that green jacket, and you do it over and over and over again, that pathway actually just gets stronger. Like one thing that I personally kind of struggle with is, for years since I was about 15, so more than half my life, I have been taking photographs and studying the craft, learning the trade, and I think in doing that so much, I've almost kind of lost my own identity, if you will. Like, I don't think of myself as Alex. I think of myself as a photographer named Alex. And so, the more and more I think about that, I think, when somebody sees my work and they don't necessarily like it, it's actually almost more devastating to me than if someone just came up to me and told me to fuck off because they don't know me. Because in my mind, what I'm hearing is like, oh, I don't like you even though you've dedicated pretty much your life to photography. I don't like your work, so everything you've done for your life, I don't like it. And like, that's crushing. And I think a feeling like that kind of comes about in a lot of people who devote themselves to a craft for a long period of time, whether it be science, writing, or anything like that.
Put all their eggs in one basket, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you'd be a great person to talk about something like this
Yeah.
with like the your races.
Yeah.
Because you have to put so much of yourself into something like that. Like, if you want to talk about that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, so like similar to you, like for like 15 years of my life, like I identified as a runner. That was all I was. That's all who I was. When I had bad performances, like, yeah, it was horrible.
Right, but is that like, because you identified yourself as a runner, was it like if someone didn't like something you did that was outside of running, did that like not affect you as much?
Yeah, it like didn't matter to me.
Because you're like, I'm a runner, so I only care about what your thoughts are on my running.
Yeah.
That's it. Because that's who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you could even, because Javin, you were even talking about like being afraid to show or share some of your writing.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I was incredibly afraid of like how it was going to be received because, like you said, you know, when you really create something and you pour your heart into it and it's not received well, like it sucks. It is really like, you're like, oh God, it's like, it's a kick in the stomach. And I think a lot of that has to do with like your level of devotion to something, you know, like, you know, I have like various different hobbies and interests in my life, but like none of them, like if you told me like, oh, you're not a good rock climber, I'd be like, okay, I don't give a shit. But like if you were like, you're not a good writer, I'd probably go cry, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it's where you focus your energy is what it just becomes more than what you do. It's like you said, you're Alex the photographer.
No, I'm a photographer named Alex.
Or yeah, you're a photographer named Alex. That's what you said.
So I'm wondering if I think there's a term for this, and I could be wrong. Maybe somebody ought to Google it, but I think the term is called cathexis.
We can look it up.
And
have the interwebs.
It's really just the emotional investment into something. So, like, I like to think of it this way. If they criticize you as a photographer, what are they telling you? It's that they don't like your photos, and your photos are sort of a manifestation of you and your emotions, right? It's taking a part of you and portraying it in a way that can make sense to somebody else. You know, like, what are you trying to capture?
Well, to me, you know, because I'm not an artistic photographer, I'm a commercial photographer. So, like, when people aren't excited about my work, you know, like, one, that doesn't just hit me, that also kind of hits my pocketbook, too.
Was that right?
Yeah, this is actually a great definition. The concentration of mental energy on one particular person, idea, or object, especially to an unhealthy degree.
That's it.
So, perfect. So we're going to continue off of the thesis. So maybe I am taking it more from an artistic standpoint, right?
Right.
You know, because I by no means probably am not
But
going to...
I think your argument would still be valid if I was an artistic photographer, too.
Well,
It's just...
probably more valid if so. Maybe
Yeah.
not as much, because, you know, like, you know, I think to a varying degree, like if somebody looked at me and they were like, dude, you're a horrible accountant, I would probably tell them I don't care. And yet that's what I do for a living, and I don't need that validation. But on the flip side of that, if you were to take a look at, I'm not a writer like you, I'm more of a lyricist, if you will. But if they were to look at that, or some of the music that I've not really shown anybody, and finally gave in and showed somebody, you know, a song that I made or something like that, and they would like look at me and be like, dude, that's awful. Like, that to me would crush me.
I think it comes back to how you identify yourself. You know, like, it's true, not everybody identifies themselves with their job. I happen to, but I think it's really more just like how you identify yourself. That's the one that's going to sting the most.
So it's almost like, so again, maybe not to my point of, I think we could still relate this back to, you know, cathexis, that definition, but maybe I'm going to change what I phrase a little bit. So maybe you're not portraying emotion as much as you're portraying yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's when you identify yourself too strongly with something. Yeah. Would you say it was healthy that you identified yourself as a runner?
No. Because when it was taken away from me, like when I got injured, I went into extreme depression, didn't know who I was, didn't know what to associate with. Like,
yeah, you kind of lose a sense of self when something like that happens.
Yeah.
Jace, how was that for you when you had to stop wrestling? Because, I mean, that was you wrestled for what, 12 years or something like that? Like, how did you go through the same kind of identity crisis when you had to stop wrestling, or were you kind of just ready?
I think we actually have an even better example. How did you two feel when you left the military?
But did you guys identify yourselves as I am a soldier named Javin and Jace?
For a certain
did you?
point, like especially in the beginning, I guess. Like I definitely, you know, embodied all the ideas of what, you know, a good private, good soldier is supposed to be. But I would say I started like transitioning out before I actually got out, because I knew I wanted to be a civilian again, and I knew that. But yeah, there's a little bit of an identity crisis. Like, you get back and you kind of are like, oh shit, you're trying to, at least for me, it was trying to do everything I could to not be that like stereotypical veteran, like that's what I was always cognizant of. Like, am I being a jackass right now? Am I coming across,
What about you, Jace? When you got out, what was that like for you?
I don't like ever think about it really.
It's weird to think about because like to me, it feels like I haven't changed very much since then, but at the same time, like I don't know, I guess I don't feel different, but I feel like I act a lot different, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Like, I look back at me when I came home, and I don't feel like a huge disconnect between like me and that person, or I don't even feel a huge disconnect between like, me and, private bear. There's not a huge disconnect, but I'm cognizant of how I choose to act now, I guess.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So let's get into, because I definitely have a problem with this unhealthy relationship with how I identify myself. So I'm trying to figure out how to identify myself as Alex, who takes pictures, versus the photographer named Alex. And ways to get around that or make it healthier, is there anything you think you could have done, like looking back, to be like, how could I have been healthy with running, identify with running, but not identify as a runner in a way that's healthy?
Yeah, I think the obsession had to be taken away from me in such a severe degree for me to even think about that.
Yeah.
And now I'm to the point where I know running, I can easily slip back into that, and so I'm very intentional on setting boundaries.
So just out of curiosity, do you only run now, or do you do other things?
No, I do so many other things. I don't identify with it.
Okay. So what else do you besides running?
I throw myself into my work, into school right now, into other outdoor activities. So kind of try to do everything.
So you try to keep it a little more balanced, like I do running here, but maybe I'm going to go bouldering here.
Yeah, and as soon as I feel myself slipping into that kind of obsession with it, like training for a race or something, I have to take a step back.
So here's another question too. Do you think that obsession is almost necessary when you're trying to become good at something? Or do you think you're almost better served if you balance it?
I think that for elite level, or to be really good at what you do, I think a lot of people at the top have that kind of obsessive.
Yeah, I think so too. But I'm just curious, what do you guys think about almost like cross training, but emotionally, where it's you work on something very hard, this is your premier thing, but then you work on other skills outside of that, just to keep it balanced and healthy? Or do you think that wouldn't be beneficial to whatever your main thing would be?
Well, I looked kind of at what you were saying, how now you set boundaries for your physical activity, and it's not just running.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you kind of save running to where it's a pleasurable thing, you're excited to go running. It's a good thing. And do you think you would have been as successful of a runner if you had that mentality opposed to the obsessive, crazy one you had when you were really just all you could think about was running?
Short term, I think that you'll get success quickly if you have that kind of more obsessive, but I think it's healthier for the long term to not get burnt out, or not to achieve lower success throughout your life instead of high success for a very short
period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody can be good at many things, but you can only be great at one thing.
Yeah.
I see it as hobbies. When I got into the role that I was in at work, they kind of sat me down and they're like, dude, this job's stressful. do you have hobbies? So you're not carrying work home with you. I was like, yeah, I got hobbies. And that's why I don't identify myself within that. That's not me. It's just what I do to make money, right? And it just so happens I'm pretty good at it. But that's not me, because outside of that, you know, I got my dirt bike, I got my garage, I got all this other crap going on, right? But ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to is, you know, everybody can be good at many things, but you're only going to be great at one thing. But I just want to bring up a point, though. Do we really think it's bad to be obsessive like that? I mean,
Well,
I kind of am directing this towards you right now.
Well, let me rephrase your question to her again.
Why?
Thank you,
Well,
Alex.
because I just want to add one other part to that question.
Okay.
So, do you think it's healthy to be obsessed with something to that degree, to the point that you identify yourself as that and only that?
I think you're playing with fire. Like, I don't think it's healthy, no.
Well, it's kind of like what you and I had talked about the other day. Like, where's the fine line between like the tortured artist and the healthy artist?
Yeah.
You know, like, because one is, you know, just overtly, just completely obsessed and, you know, emotionally involved into their work. And then you have people that do put out, you know, good quality work that aren't like, you know, drowning themselves in a bottle of Sailor Jerry's and throwing paint at walls and shit, you know?
And I'd say like now that all my mental energy is not directed toward this one thing, I'm so much more fulfilled in my like life as a whole because every area has been paid attention to now.
And see, that's the part where I like really struggle. And it's not that I necessarily do it intentionally, it's just I get hyper focused on something. And so when I get hyper focused on it, it's not that I'm intentionally like neglecting other areas of my life.
Yeah.
It's that, oh shit, I just spent 8 hours on this one thing. Now I need to go to bed. I haven't done anything else with my day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially because I work from home, I literally bring my work home with me.
I don't know. Sometimes I thrive on that, like, unhealthy kind of obsession with it, though. Like, and I feel like it a lot of times will help me write something better. Like, so I don't know.
There's a dark side to it.
Yeah, I think you gotta find.
I'm not talking unhealthy. Is it bad? When we're talking ethically speaking, because it's probably unhealthy to stress you out to that or put your body through that kind of stress, right?
Yeah.
But ethically speaking, you as a human being, are you a bad person for focusing that much?
No.
It's
No.
100% your choice.
Yeah, I think some of it might. I mean, to a degree, I feel like it's almost a little bit beyond your control. Like when you really dump your heart and soul into something, like you can't help but get bent out of shape when it's not going the way you want, or you have writer's block, or you're not, you know, hitting the times you want. Whatever it is, like you're not. It would almost be crazier to like not meet a goal like that and be like, well, I don't care. You know, and then just move along with your life. At least to me.
But here's the example I'll give you, and this is how I was for years of my life. Like if I spent all that time on something and I worked on a project and I saw the final result, I was like, that sucked. And the reason it sucked is because I sucked, because I didn't do all the proper work to get it prepared the way I wanted. I didn't do enough research. I didn't.
You don't even consider it a critique of your work as much as you yourself could have done better.
Yes.
Interesting.
Don't you think? I feel like that kind of thought process is always going to be there in anything that you come up short on, as far as it's like the way it's received. I think your mind is always going to go there. Like you'll think about that one night that you decided to, you know, get some sleep instead of continue working or training or whatever, and you're like, oh god damn it, like that's it. That was the moment right there that I let it slip. So, but I don't know. I guess I don't know. That's something we talked about in the other podcast too. Is just also how important it is to fail and to have things received poorly. So,
but I think there's a distinction between having things seem poorly, or having like proper critique.
yeah.
Like if you looked at my work and you're like, I don't really like your photo, but it's because of this, and there are things you can work on. That is like way easier to take than when someone just goes, it's trash, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Or worst of all, they're just like, meh. And you're like, I just spent 6 months on that. And your response is meh. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference. One is more torturing. The other one I feel like is almost building.
Yeah. Because one, you can take something from one. The other one, you're just like, what do you not like? Like, fucking say, use your words. At least insult me intelligently. Like,
Yes. We've kind of established, like, it's probably something that happens with anybody who devotes enough time and energy into it. Is how do you mentally transition from this, like, obsessive, self-identifying, whatever it is in your life to, to other things in your life. You know what I mean? Like, how do you, like, because I think it's still okay to be focused on something, but how do you go from, like, this is what I'm working on, this is how I identify, to this is just what I'm working on, now I'm going to work on something else? Like, is that a conscious thought, or is that something?
so you're saying outside of, like,
Absolutely.
consciously scheduling to do other
It
things?
is a conscious thought. It doesn't happen by accident. Think about the definition of cathesis. It's an unhealthy devotion to something. So you're not going to unconsciously say, I'm going to do that, because you're going to be looking back at it and saying, why would I do that when I could just be doing this? Why am I going to waste my time?
I really think that you have to remove yourself from what you identify as and give yourself that space to know that you're going to be okay without it. And you're going to, like, you are still you without this.
But
that would make sense.
It is a conscious thought, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that with all the other, because I've gotten into, like, I was a baseball player for years. That's how I identified. I was a mountain biker. That's how I identified. BMX rider. That's how I identified.
The BMX thing is hard for both of us.
Yeah. Grad student. That's how I identified. The downside with this one is, because this is my job, I can't remove that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's in there. It's built in. So I have, like, so detaching it from 8 hours of work to, okay, now time to focus on other things. Nika, do I taste good?
No, he kisses when he's excited.
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the boundaries. Like, you've got to intentionally give yourself this time to shut off everything. Give yourself 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, and then go do something else that, like, completely makes you.
Yeah, you have to consciously detach.
Thing, like for me, because I work from home too.
Yeah.
And Pauline always asked me, like, how do you, like, leave work in the office and then do everything else? And it's because when 4:30 hits, I'm done.
Yeah.
Absolutely done. So I have that boundary of when 4:30 hits, I'm done. If I need to come in early the next day, that's fine. But I can't stay after.
Gotcha.
Do you get vacation time?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very flexible schedule. So
like actual, like, week off.
I mean, if I wanted to, I could schedule it. I mean, I don't work every single day.
Yeah.
So I have time to do stuff, but it's just because I'm so focused on it and, like, I want to be so good at it that I, like, even when I have vacation time, I want to work. Like, I'll use that time instead of relaxing to go work on something else.
Well, and that's just it. You have to consciously detach from your work or from, like,
if
what
you're taking the time off to go do something, that means you were passionate about it and you wanted to go do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that strong of a drive.
No, I agree with that, but I think that, like, there it can become too much, like, say you're all right, so you take that time off to pursue what you want to work on, right? And say you feel very fulfilled and it's great, but you do it say you take it in an unhealthy way and you're just obsessive about it and it's not helping you in any way, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's just a negative energy. I guess that's, like, where, I don't know. I think I just lost my train of thought.
Why are you bringing this all up? Like, what, do you feel like you're, like, hurting other areas of your life? Like, is that
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so.
Like, I mean, I used to ride my bike all the time. I used to go camping all the time. But this last year, where, like, this is what I do for a living, Like I think I put so much pressure on it that I completely forgot about every other aspect.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, I've recognized this in myself before. Like when I was in grad school,
Yeah.
that's all I did. When I was, BMXing, that's all I did. Like, I tend to find one thing that I'm like working on, and then I'll identify as that.
Yeah, the schooling. Yeah.
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 Well, I don't know. Maybe Jason's right. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that.
I
To an extent.
don't think that I've ever hit a point where I've been like truly satisfied of where I was.
Well, that's part
To
of
the-
the
to the
obsessive
point where, like-
nature, though.
To where you wouldn't want to keep pursuing something.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely stopped because I was just like,
You kind of. Would you say you became fulfilled in it? You were like, all right,
No,
I did what I wanted to do, and now something
I
else.
think I've just got to the point where I realized like I wasn't dedicated enough to get to that point.
Okay.
I feel like I've pretty much given up on a lot of what I was interested in at some point, just because like I knew I wasn't putting in enough work. At least that's how I viewed it. Is that I don't think I've ever given 100%
Well, and I think.
to anything.
Wow.
I don't know if it's possible to truly give 100% to everything now.
That is true.
And
I
something
think-
I can say that I've taken so much pride in that it like changed me or like made me think that I was doing too much,
Yeah.
mentally.
I don't know. I guess. It's bizarre.
I will say like that has interested so much that the environment around me was bad and I wanted to get away from that environment. I can say that like that kind of pushed it into that way. Like I didn't like the lifestyle of where that interest had pushed me, so I got away from it.
Was it like a dangerous lifestyle, or was it just like
No, the
it?
lifestyle is what the stressor was like.
What do you mean? Like, can you give me an example?
You get leaving the mentality of
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the stress that's just associated with like just moving on. Like, and I think one thing that you had said, like, you've had so many interests and you feel like you might not have given 100% to all of them. I think that's kind of a lot like what you're talking about, Alex, is, you knew yourself as a baseball player and then BMX or grad student. I think we all do that. Like, that's just part of developing attributes of yourself. Like, everybody at one point in their life or another has, identified themselves as something, whether it be what they do or a lot of time when you're younger, it's your hobby or a sport.
And wanting to master that.
Yeah, and you have that wanting. You always, I think it's almost healthy to have, like, I guess I agree with Jace. Like, it's healthy to have that almost obsessive want when you are doing something, because at least you can say that you gave close to 100% or whatever, that is. You really devoted yourself to something.
Mm.
So
That was what I was trying to say earlier, was like, it's not bad to do that until you start breaching what might be considered ethical, right? So, Tanya Harding, right? That whole incident, I don't know a lot about it. She hurt somebody. That's how she won. She breached an ethical boundary, right? She became that obsessed over it. I become obsessed over something, and me and my wife, we start getting into arguments about it, and let's say maybe I lose my temper because I'm so stressed out about this, and I take it out on her. I'm breaching that ethical boundary. But up until then, it's you and your body. Okay, if you want to run yourself dry, if you want to develop health issues because of all the stress, if you want to neglect yourself, physically by not going to the gym or eating too much or eating too little, that's on you. That's not hurting anybody else. So to that point, it's not really a bad thing to do. But when it starts affecting those around you, that's different. I think in Alex's case, though, we're reaching that ground of it's hurting me to the point almost where I don't want this anymore. Like I want to still have that drive, but I want to have an outlet that I don't have to worry. I can just release that stress.
Yeah, I think to some extent, like, I think to me the reason those outlets would be important isn't necessarily because, like, I don't necessarily have a problem that I focus as much as I do on photography. I think the issue is when people don't like my work, then it may, like, they'll send me into a deep dive where I'm like,
Yeah.
I fucking suck. This is like, I should have done more. And negative thoughts. So I think what I'm trying to get at is like, how do you identify instead of with one thing, with multiple things? So that if one of those things gets maybe negative commentary, you're not suffering because it's not like, well, they just attacked my whole being. Well, it's like they just don't like that one thing.
I think a lot of that is, your perception of your own work. If you're allowing the photograph that you're working on to encompass everything about you, then you're allowing that. And it's not something that you might even necessarily have control over, but you're allowing that. And so that's why a negative reception of that might hurt you. I guess you kind of, in a way, you have to limit not how much you put into something that you're working on, but like how much, what's the word for it? Like how much
Investment.
Like emotional investment.
Yeah, and I think you can figure how to delegate that. Like when something is really worth 100% of your emotional investment, and when something you can dial it back a little bit.
Right.
I think it's like through doing other things that you're able to detach from the one like that you really care about. Because like for example, I'm just gonna use my past. So all I cared about was running. So my mind was always on running. I trained like 6 hours a day, and I read. But all I read was books on running. Everything was running. And so, like, when I had bad performance, it was, like, game over.
Yeah.
But now, for example, I spend 1 hour in the morning with friends out running, go to work, so that's that. That's something different. And then I have school in the evenings, that's something completely different. And then, like, I have a relationship on top of that, which has nothing to do with running. So it's like, so when running, I have a bad day, it does not even affect me at all. It's like, okay,
right.
I've, put myself into these other things.
Well, I think that's another reason why I was so keen to do this podcast, because even though it's peripheral, like if somebody doesn't like our podcast, it's not going to bother me.
Yeah.
So like it's my way, I think, of like starting to work on outside of.
This is your mini therapy session.
Kind of. This is.
Right now it definitely is.
This definitely turned into way more about me than I wanted it to be. Like I was trying to draw on other ideas and like just talk about it generally.
Yeah, but now we talking about you, baby girl.
Yeah, we want to know all about you.
Hi, welcome to the therapy session.
Remember what I said earlier? We love
ain't
you
free.
all.
That's what my master's degree is in, so.
Nice.
Yes.
Shelly's just having the time of her life.
She's like, oh, these guys crazy.
Her notes are just like, what the fuck? Are you serious?
The words that are coming out of these guys' mouths.
Holy shit.
That's good. This is good.
This is
all right. Well, what other points do you want to talk about with this? And I guess
get to like is do you think like too? And we kind of already talked about it, but like people because I do want to talk about this, and Kelly already kind of brought up the idea of like doing different things. But like, do you think this is something that like is common in maybe certain career paths?
Yes.
Like what career paths would you think that's common in?
Law enforcement, nursing, law,
Ones where you
politics.
can't escape. You can't.
Yeah, where you're kind of on 24/7.
Yeah.
And maybe like something that doesn't have any translation to anything else, like.
Yeah, like outside of this job, your skills are essentially worthless.
Yeah, you're just, beyond that job, like, what do you have to offer? You begin to have that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
I agree. But those people seem to always find some sort of an outlet. The people who are really good at that remain sane, try to have that turn off button and find that outlet to go out and do something different, right?
Yeah.
Then let me ask you this though too. Do you think society would be better off without the people who completely invest in a certain skill?
Society would be better if that's all we had, because it would be down on a proportion that would actually be meaningful and not something to only benefit society. If you took that, you know what? I'm gonna bring it up. All right. It would be beneficial if we were to take that down. So instead of saying I'm going to put this much effort in, if I don't, the company fails. Right? It's if I don't put this much effort into it, I die. hunters and gatherers, right?
Yeah.
You have to be focused 24/7 on that because that is your way of surviving.
I've never even thought about a biological perspective on this.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I can't believe I even brought that up. I was hesitant. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just thinking, like, you know, if
Can you go over that one more time? I'm sorry, I'm a little lost.
You're a little lost. Yeah. So Alex's question was,
would society be better off if we didn't have those people that did, you know, commit themselves at a very high level?
So nobody was just 100% anything.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And then what I said is it would be beneficial if it were from more of the individual perspective. If we had somebody from a very, like, not even societal perspective, if we had it more down towards the group or individual level, where the 100% meant survival versus the 100% means I'm going to get promotions, more money, I'm going to help this company grow, whatever the case is. If we were to take it down to that, so almost a very primitive level,
where survival is your motivation.
We could see that. So what we've really lost is the need for survival. And when we don't have that, and we start doing that 100%, basically what we're telling ourselves is, you already have it, but you need more. You're just this unsatiable being trying to go out looking for more, right?
So are you saying that, so because we are more, let's just say, comfortable now, and like you said, the need for survival is not like a forefront thing for us, that when we pick up a hobby or a craft or whatever it is, and do we start feeling that same like drive for survival is funneled through that? Does that make sense? Like we're replacing one with the other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of it, you know.
Huh.
That actually makes a lot of sense for those people that do that too. I mean, like Albert Einstein, like man woke up, did math, went to sleep. Dreamt about math, woke up, did math, went to sleep. Like, if you were to replace math with hunting,
he would have been the alpha hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think intellectually, it's not bad to also consider that, because intellectually, you know, it could be a means of evolution, which could be related back to survival. So what Albert Einstein did is probably not, in my opinion, bad. So somebody who spends 24/7 trying to solve a math problem, or like in my case, 24/7 studying politics and philosophy, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because for you, that could relate to survival, or at least the progression of the human race, right? But like, I'm going to use a nurse as an example. The nurse who can never leave work at work, and that's a big problem for a lot of them. I mean, my poor wife has to come home with me, who already has health issues, and gets to continue being a nurse, right? You know, she's not focused on her survival at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. She's focused on everybody else's survival. And sometimes not even somebody that she has any like interest in per se, right?
Connection to.
I mean, she does have obviously like a Hippocratic oath that she wants to fulfill, things like that. But you see how that could be detrimental, right?
Yeah, so what I think I'm kind of hearing you say is, like, it's not necessarily bad for society when the individual is doing it for the individual, but when the individual has to take on responsibilities of others and is never really allowed to escape from what they do, that's where the problem lies.
Yes.
It's almost, unfortunately, like necessary.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I mean, I hate to sound like a typical anarchist, but you're just a cog in the machine, right?
I mean,
who are you benefiting? Not you.
Well, and like you know, a nurse, for example, like you're saying, like it's unfortunate that, you know, so much of her care is for other people and so little for herself. Some roles, like nurses, are, you know, unfortunately necessary to society. You know, you're talking about how they spend all their time, all their devotion on other people, have very little energy left for themselves. But without people that are that selfless or willing to take on that role in society, like you're fucked, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
I mean, it's the same with doctors and, you know, I'm gonna say lawyers, but I'm not 100% sure that's true.
Yeah,
But it's
I'm
like,
lawyers
you
out
know,
this
the
way.
careers where they're necessarily not allowed an escape. Like,
Yeah.
That's where what you're saying is that's where it starts to become detrimental. To
That
some extent.
is the one,
Detrimental
which
to the
might,
individual.
yeah, detrimental to the individual, absolutely, and it might be somewhat paradoxical to think about because somebody like in a healthcare business is necessary, but I could probably argue for other things that we would consider as necessary to not be necessary. You know, like
Wouldn't you consider that though, like from person to person,
Yeah.
about how someone? I
Somebody.
wouldn't say it's particularly like a career per se.
I
would
mean,
say
it
maybe you
could be
see a
more
lot more in
fulfilling.
that career type deal.
I mean, it could be more fulfilling compared to other things because it does ultimately come back to the idea of survival, right? But then we take a lawyer for an example, which in society is key, but
To the individual.
to the individual and anything practical outside of the government is, well, completely worthless. I mean, if there was no government, we wouldn't need a lawyer, right?
Yeah, but what if somebody is, you know, fulfilled in these roles? You know, like there's, you know, plenty of nurses, doctors, you know, just public servants, if you will, that are entirely fulfilled just being that, just being, you know, at the whim of others.
Some people are that way.
You know, and
Absolutely.
Well,
I
I
guess-
guess there's like a little bit of less a mental processing too when you do that, because you don't necessarily have to think of yourself in any other way or expand in any other way to like other interests. Like if you're just like, this is what I am, this is who I am, that's all I need to do, and I'm completely happy with it. Like that's rationally, mentally easier to think about than trying to identify with a bunch of other things.
I mean, without any actual statistics, part of me would probably just bring up that that's not all they do all the time. You know,
yeah,
when they get done with that, you know, they're woodworking, painting, hanging out with their spouse, you know, being a beer snob, you know, whatever the case is, right? You know, something in me says that unless we actually had, you know, data with us, probably not safe to assume that that's what they do 24/7 or to some degree and still feel fulfilled.
yeah. I guess that, yeah. My analogy is pretty far-reaching. That's assuming that there's a lot of like, you know, Mother Teresa's, if you will, that are just like, I don't sleep, I just care for children. Like, you know.
I didn't know Mother Teresa was Irish.
Well, she is now.
Okay.
That's the impression that came out. Just rewrite the history, folks.
Okay, not to like throw my mom under the bus, but I feel like my mom is completely that way. Like if she would not care about anything other than being a mom is like her most.
We did talk about this the other day, how like moms can not moms, parents can sometimes lose themselves in their kids, so they completely forgo all their hobbies and interests, and then like their world is just their kids.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that's healthy for the kid or the parent at all?
No, like if you know, you see those certain parents that are just like,
Helicopters.
yeah, just crazy about their kids. That's too much. But I think there's a fine line, you know.
Wait, hold on. On the exact same time, none of us are parents.
That is true. But it doesn't mean we don't have a perspective.
Well,
That's
Peaches is. He's got a dog. He's got 2 dog babies.
That's true.
I don't project much on him except just to be cute.
I guess like the thing that I think
There's
I don't
not a lot.
project much on my dog.
Yeah, there's not a high level of expectation. They do.
I guess the thing that I think about is like my mom's that way, and now she's not challenging herself with anything or growing or like the kids are at the house, but like so she's like I don't know, she has nothing to do.
She's lost her.
Yeah,
Not her purpose, but her
Would that
drive.
just be from our perspective? Maybe she's completely fulfilled with where she is in her life.
Well, I think about your mom, for example. You know, always cooking, always entertaining, always just like, just doing stuff for other people. And you know, I've talked to her about it, and I truly do think that makes your mom
That
happy.
makes them happy, yeah.
You know, and if you know, I guess.
I don't know.
It can be good and it can be bad, you know, because I know that it had to be really hard for your mom when, you know, there was no kids in the house at one point, like, because then, you know, who's she cooking for and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, and she takes better care of us than she does herself.
Absolutely.
Well, sometimes we do see that. Other times we see kids leave the house and mom and dad go back to being high school with students, you know, and constantly loving
that's
and
how
going
I
to
feel
trips,
like,
you know what I mean?
That's how I feel like it should be. Like, hey, I dedicated. He gone now.
Yeah.
Like,
And
I can go do what I want.
I mean, it just really depends, but like,
It's like a
like behind closed doors, like, what's your mom doing? You know what I mean?
But then again, you know, your mom too, you know, she's traveling to France and all that kind of stuff too, so
Yeah.
she's not limiting herself. But I think that, you know, you see that a lot with, like you said, with parents. They just get limited to that, and then it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
the hell do I do now?
At the same time, like, my mom focuses on her career as well.
Yeah.
So.
True.
Do you think there's something to be said for the act of like challenging yourself?
And
Like outside of whatever you've devoted your life to, like, do you think there's more benefit if you take on other tasks or skill sets, but you phrase it in a way that's like, I'm gonna grow because of this. Like, I'm gonna try and push myself in these other areas rather than just like, well, I'm just gonna do it, but I don't really care about it. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like the helicopter, like if I crash it, like I don't care except for the money that it costs to fix it. But if I were to take that and be like, okay, well, it has nothing to do with photography, but I'm going to challenge myself every time I fly it to do something other than just, you know, dick around with it. Like, do you think
That's kind of what you did on the bike, though. You know, when you're outside of that situation in unfamiliar grounds, and you're finding, what are they called? They're called surrogate activities. You know, something that doesn't provide much real benefit other than something to you. And that might be a loose term, because I think that's more or less like, I think a true surrogate activity is one where you think you're actually changing the world, but in all reality you're fighting for something that's completely worthless. So maybe I'm just going to keep saying the word hobby. Fuck it. But you're breaking out of that space, right? I think it's beneficial.
Well, I'm just saying, do you think there's more benefit in doing it to a point where you're challenging yourself?
Yeah.
well, I think that's where
Absolutely.
I think that's the difference between a hobby and an interest. You know, like, you can have several little things that you're interested in or whatever, but like when something becomes a hobby and it becomes something that you become invested in, like, I think it is, you know, to some degree, to be like, hell yeah, I want to be the best fucking helicopter, you know, remote control helicopter pilot there is, you know, and while you might even be able to rationalize, like, that's not going to happen, it's still fun to have that thought and be like, you know, watching, you know, people on YouTube and then going and trying it, crashing it, but you're like, I tried. Oh well. Oh, we're having a moment over here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him to sleep. He's tired.
I think this is one of my favorite seats that I've had thus far on all the episodes.
Apple
I think we
boxes.
should get a shorter table. I really think that is the problem.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah.
Our table is pretty tall.
And we only have 2 chairs that actually like are for it.
Yeah. I mean, we could just buy tall chairs too. That would go along
That
with the
would
table.
also solve the problem and probably be cheaper.
All right. How much
Sorry.
time do we have left?
10 minutes.
All right. Let's summarize. What have we learned?
Well,
I mean, what's the key takeaway? Obviously, we know that we came into this talking about having a biased opinion and also cathesis, right? We talked about this unhealthy investment into a particular activity or thought process, right? And throughout this wonderful therapy session, we've all taken away something.
well, let's start. Jace, what do you brought up the point of building a bias? What do you think you took away from that today?
I think like it was just kind of like a new idea that got thrown on me through my class the other week. And it was just kind of something that I thought about. It was like, maybe I've shut someone out of my life or been not very accepting of someone else because of like either like a kind of like a rude bias I had towards someone or like a rude culture that I've been in that like projects a rude thing on them. So I've maybe shut that person out and don't know them completely as a person type deal. And it's just like that was something that came up in my thought is like maybe I don't have that person in my life because of X, Y, and Z, because of maybe that's how I treated them, or that's how I perceived it. And I noticed that, like, once I moved back to Colorado, there was some people in California that I never really got to know very well because I felt this bias about them. And then, when I was leaving California, I got to know them just a little bit more to the point where I rebuilt it. And it's like that person could have been significantly more important in my life right now. But since I didn't put in the time to really get to know them on a personal level, it was more just I realized that I've shut people out and could have had more this. Later down the road, I've got to know them a little more from stepping back and kind of seeing them on social media and stuff like that, and they're like, man, we have actually a lot more in common than I ever thought because I never talked to you.
So you think that's going to change how you interact with people in the future?
Yeah, I do, because once I realized that thought, it kind of made me more tolerable to certain type of people, people in my class that are we have that one dude in our class, he opens his mouth and it's just I sit there and I'm like, man, that's just his view, that's his opinion. And it's not even opinionated things, it's just the way he acts and perceives himself. Is that
is ignorant.
Is it annoying to me the way he acts, but that's just who he is. And so there's no way to treat him differently just because
Well, that's actually a great example because obviously I let that dude get under my skin. I do.
I get so fired up.
And and you're right. I'm allowing myself to have this intense bias towards this kid because I've had.
On that note, Kelly says that to me all the time. When I'm driving and I get angry, she's like, "Are you getting angry? You're gonna ruin that person's day." What did you say?
Yeah, something like that.
When you say that bugs me because I know you're so freaking right.
What is it?
Him getting mad is ruining his day, not the other person's. How are you having any impact on that person's day at all? They're completely oblivious to what you're doing, and you've just created yourself so much stress.
But this is my problem, I guess, more or less with this classmate of ours that I'm having, an issue with is it's not so much that I'm angry at what he's saying, but when somebody they say shit that is so embarrassing, you can't help but also feel that embarrassment.
Why are you so embarrassed by what someone else is doing?
I can't help it.
I get what you're feeling.
It is similar.
I can't help it. I just I feel I see him up there just saying this crazy shit, and I'm like, oh my god, stop!
Ow!
Yeah,
You're hurting me too.
Yeah,
bro.
I feel when I walked out of the classroom the other day was not intentionally to make a spectacle of myself or even be mean to him. I had to leave because of how uncomfortable I felt.
Okay, hold on. On a real note, this man made me leave the class because he said, what did you say?
I said
the sound of your voice.
No, I said everything you say makes my butthole pucker.
That is when this kid opened his mouth, that is what Javin said.
No, Alex had a good point though. That's why you feel this way.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just a sign of being empathetic.
And you can see yourself in other people's shoes. You're very aware of
Maybe
There's a term for it. Empath. Go look it up.
Hold on. The other day in art class, I definitely was cutting out some cardboard, and I was like, man, this box stinks. And that popped out, and I sat there, and I was just that just came out of my mouth. If I had heard that, I would have been oh boy, I would have fed right off that. And I was just now it's coming from me. I'm the old person here.
This box stinks. That's another great quote.
I realized that in class. I was like, whoa.
Alright, so I think to sum everything up,
this box stinks.
That box stinks.
You heard it here first, folks.
but only that one box.
Guys,
not all boxes in
notes,
general.
I just have a bunch of quotes from Jace.
Yeah.
That's what the second stream of 18's first quote t-shirt should say.
That box stinks.
That box stinks. Just
Hey,
that box.
watch this show.
That box stinks. Watch this podcast.
Let me hustle. It's
Coming-
gonna be the real one. That's gonna be
Coming
our
at you
first
soon.
shirt.
Alright guys, well we hope you enjoyed the debate or talk/therapy session.
We never really talked about what we learned. It's like an episode of Family Guy. Nobody really learned.
You heard it. you can learn from it or
Decipher your own meanings.
Yes, it's like music.
It's like music. That's how we can get away with just rambling.
It's like a,
We're like,
like a sneaky box, man. You take away from it what you need.
we're that.
Zach Fox is a lyrical genius.
Yes.
I took away that Jesus is the one. That's what I got from that.
Free 10K,
All right, guys.
free
Well, we
Palestine.
hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we are going to Texas Roadhouse now. Peace.
Good night.